Last month, I put out a video about the abandoned Mountain Division line in Maine with an urgent call to action. The Conway Scenic Railroad said they wanted to reopen the line, but at the same time, rail-to-trail interests were pushing for the track to be ripped up. A meeting was coming up regarding this issue, and the decision to fund the track removal would hinge on how it went. For those who don't know, the Maine portion of the Mountain Division runs from Portland, Maine to Fryeburg, where it meets the New Hampshire Department of Transportation-owned section of the line at the New Hampshire border. The tracks here were last used in 1986, and since then the tracks have sat dormant. Despite 4 decades of no use, the rail line has been maintained to some extent. The brush is well kept, which has preserved the drainage, which in turn has prevented washouts and has helped preserve the ties to some extent. This is a very unique and rare version of an abandoned railroad, as most other places just let the property go. In great contrast to Maine's portion of the line, take a look at the portion of the Mountain Division in Vermont. Vermont Rail is looking to reopen the portion of track from Whitefield, New Hampshire to St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and they have already started clearing the tracks in Whitefield. That part of the line is in much worse shape than the Maine side. In addition to the line being well kept, portions of the rail line have a bike path built alongside it. Fryeburg and Windham are fantastic examples of rail and rail trails, even if trains do not currently use the tracks. Now, not far from the border with New Hampshire, the Conway Scenic Railroad runs a successful tourist train operation on the New Hampshire part of the Mountain Division. Most people know them for the Mountaineer or Notch train excursions through Crawford Notch, or perhaps for the shorter excursions that have previously operated to Bartlett, and the ones that run down the former Boston and Maine Conway branch. There's even cruise train excursions that connect with charter buses that have to drive from Portland, Maine, because the tracks aren't currently in service in Maine. The Conway Scenic actually reopened the Mountain Division from Conway and into Crawford Notch in the mid-1990s, and since then it has been successfully operated. They are even expanding their use of the line this year. For the first time ever, winter excursions ran to Crawford, and riders got to enjoy the rarely seen views of the Notch in winter. Looking at their website, they have 3 separate departures for trains through Crawford Notch on select weekends this fall. This is all very exciting and shows that what they do in New Hampshire works and would be very possible to replicate their success in Maine as long as the tracks stay in place. So back to the meeting for the LD 676 Mountain Division Rail Use Advisory Council. It was being pushed and would potentially fund the removal of the rail line from Sebago to Fryeburg, but it would be an interim use trail. By this, they mean the line would be a trail until a railroad presents itself to restore and operate it as a rail line. This interim use is just to try to make the rail people happy, but realistically the tracks would never be put back once removed. Also, a railroad has already presented itself to operate the line today, that being Conway Scenic. With all this in mind, many pro-rail advocates spent a day at the State House in Augusta, Maine, to voice their opinion that the rail needs to stay so it can be put back to use. I'm told about 40 pro-rail people were in attendance, and only around 5 or so trail people attended or testified. Amongst them were Conway Scenic employees and owner David Swerk, who explained what Conway wants to do with the line. More on that later. During the meeting, the senator who got up to introduce the bill said that the Conway Scenic was looking to have Maine request for hundreds of millions of dollars from the congressional delegation to rebuild the tracks for them so they could take tourists from Portland, Maine to North Conway, New Hampshire. He then called the operation of the Mountain Division a pipe dream and called the pro-rail advocates fanatics. I'm sure many of the people there in support of the rail weren't too happy being minimized to fanatics when they spent much of their day fighting for something they believed in. According to the senator, the line was historically never profitable, even though it operated for a century or so, right until it was purchased by Guilford Transportation and shut down in favor of a different routing on a duplicate line. Just a few years after that, Guilford stopped running local freight on the line to North Conway because of a labor strike. If the Maine Central was never taken over by Guilford, it is probable the line would still be in use today. Another statement by him was that the tracks today are completely unusable, including the rail. Interestingly enough, I have personally seen a number of rail projects reusing original rail when being restored. The Conway Scenic Railroad also operates over the same kind of rails in New Hampshire, much of which is the original rail from the Maine Central. Another interesting note is that after the senators sat down, no other co-sponsors of the bill showed up to testify. Eventually, folks from the Conway Scenic Railroad were able to present their testimonies against LD 676, and some very interesting information came out of these presentations. While initially looking at the Mountain Division for tourist operations, the Conway Scenic turned their focus to include freight. Tourist trains alone wouldn't justify the railroad's restoration, but freight or a combination of both would. Conway then started to look for what they could move off of the roads and onto the rail. They found 20 potential freight rail users, all businesses that serve a purpose and contribute to Maine's economy. The commodities talked about were propane and energy products, waste moving through a transfer station, and other products like lumber. Other potential may include aggregates or steel/rebar talked about previously. 20 businesses or users of the freight rail line is a lot, and certainly nothing to sneeze at. So hopefully these supportive of removing the rails will finally realize how much of a benefit the rail would be if it stayed. Conway, being a tourist railroad, is also considering running tourist trains on these tracks eventually, but freight is the priority. Another question that some may ask is, why is Conway Scenic looking at operating these tracks now after all these years? Well, just a couple years ago, CSX Transportation purchased Pan Am Railways, which was just the rebranded Guilford Transportation System that originally shut down the Mountain Division in the 1980s. Guilford and Pan Am's reign on the lines in the Northeast wasn't a positive one, and CSX is looking to reverse the years of neglect and damage. Since the purchase in 2022, CSX has been able to rebuild much of the old Pan Am infrastructure and has brought back rail customers that stopped shipping by train because of Guilford's horrible service. They have finally come to a point where they can welcome more traffic, like the potential freight from the Conway Scenic. For those who don't know, CSX often partners up with smaller railroads to move freight to and from their Class 1 system, with the short line operators handling first or last mile shipments on their own tracks. Conway Scenic would operate as one of these short lines, doing the same exact thing by taking advantage of the rebuilt and revitalized Pan Am Guilford tracks. Now, if Conway gets the right to operate the tracks, they'll have to work out a plan with the Maine Department of Transportation to repair and then operate the line. Some previous discussions and studies estimated repairs of the rail line to be somewhere from $65 to $200 million, but it doesn't have to be that much. Conway is proposing that Maine DOT simply provides the material needed to fix the rail, and they would do the construction themselves. They certainly have the equipment to do it, as they previously restored and now maintain the New Hampshire stretch of the line from North Conway to Hazens. By having Conway handle the construction, it would save Maine a lot of money. With this in mind, Conway is actively trying to plan out a way to execute this in a cost-effective manner, as they are a business and need to watch their investments carefully. Now, what came of the meeting? The bill associated with removing the tracks was supposed to be discussed further the following week, but has now been postponed for now. This pauses the potential removal of the tracks, as the funding to do so hasn't been approved. This isn't the end of the fight though, so stay tuned for future videos on how to help keep the tracks in place. I would love to see Conway Scenic revitalize this route for freight use to serve the local businesses, and plan to document the rebuilding process if all goes well. In the meantime, I have filmed a number of videos of the line as it is today, and those will be released over the next several weeks, stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, and thank you for the support of the Mountain Division Rail Line in Maine.